There was no program dislodging operations here. So whenever a septic tank overflows, the family or the mother calls a service provider, which charges from a range of 4,000 to 6,000 pesos. And that's very, you know, and that's high. In this program, dislodging, and in this model, the communities are able to pay in trickles on installment, and that turns out to be very affordable, and it turns out to be a lot less than paying a service provider one time. Yes, for a time we had big opposition from the host community in the first place. They had resistance. They resisted because they did not know exactly what would happen in their environment. They thought that it would smell, they thought that flies will be flying around, all these, horrible thoughts, without really knowing that it will be this beautiful area and this park. We can call this a park already. So after a lot of campaign, promotions, and advocacies, they get convinced that it's not horrible at all.
Uh, we, we look at the angle that the project we're working on then is to have a sustainable system that will be affordable to the people gonna serving. As you mentioned, there's a tariff that will be passed on to the customers. So immediately coming to my mind is what is the cheapest technology we can offer, and that will make it cheaper for people to, in terms of paying for the juice. We surveyed the area, and this is in a rural area, so space is not a problem. And the city government, as mentioned in the Clean Water Act, that they should take care of providing for the lot, and they have this luxury of space. So why don't you look at lagoon system or waste stabilization plants?
Okay, DNR, this is the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, has standards on the quality of the effluent. They have standards for BOD. It should not exceed a certain amount. But here, they don't have a standard for ground disposal at all. They have standards for disposing into water bodies, but none on ground disposal. The BOD ranges from as low as 500 to about 9,000. It really varies based on the age of your septic tank and of the latest or the last dislodging. Because if it's new, freshly dislodged, you would expect a lower BOD. But most of the septic tanks here have never been dislodged at all, so maybe for the last 10 years or so. So the BOD and the SSS, suspended solids, are quite high.
As this is one of the very first septic management programs in the Philippines to use the business model that we call scheduled desludging. people will call up from this part of town, and then maybe the next day they're calling up from over here. So the truck can't be very efficient. But with the scheduled desludging program, you're going house by house, so the truck can be much more efficient instead of going all over the neighborhood. So because of that efficiency, the cost can come down significantly for the people. This program really is based on three components. The first component is the infrastructure, the technology. And we're looking at the technology here. This is the treatment plant. That's infrastructure. You can see the trucks in the background. That is infrastructure. And even the access road that comes into the plant is infrastructure. The second component we want to talk to you about is the promotions. Because let's face it, you can have the best technology, but if people don't really understand it or value it, they're not going to be using it properly or availing of the service. And then the third component is what we like to call the enabling environment. And that is the rules, the regulations, the procedures, and the fees that support the program. When you get these three components, the infrastructure, the promotions, and this enabling environment all coming together, you can have a sustainable program. And that's what we're seeing here. It's sustained itself for over 6 years, and now it's becoming a nice model that other municipalities throughout the Philippines are starting to replicate.
Well, actually, there are many treatment processes we can apply. We can go for the really mechanized systems, but this consumes a lot of powers, high-skilled people to operate it, and maintenance of equipment, and at the same time, higher operating costs definitely. We can go lime stabilization. This is a technology used in many other countries that you get to disinfect the sludge by exposing the septage in 30 minutes pH 12 continuously. So to have the assurance that the bugs or the bacteria dies. But then you have this problem of handling. It's a hazard thing, you know. Handling lime is not that easy, and at the same time, continual purchase, buying, and sourcing, this is a concern. Future municipalities considering this option. Actually, if we gonna go in a right way, we'll let the municipality make the choices. We give them the options, but in this case, we try in some sense influence them to go for this setup. Actually, they were consulted and they approve it. Otherwise, they can still consider other choices. But then, I think based on the rationalization or the advantages, they made their decision that to do lagoon systems. And plenty of materials can be sourced out in the, you can Google it, search the libraries, and this is a natural system that is very much efficient, provided you have the space. So it's been applied to lagoons for pig farms, for slaughterhouses. Actually, when we did this, Miss Josie already had a lagoon system for their slaughterhouse. So that also helped, I think, that made them decide to have this. Because when we're offering this is nothing new to them.
So in order to do a good promotions campaign, one of the things we really have to work on is getting the evidence. And there's really two kinds of evidence that we're really after. So the first is we're trying to figure out from the community how much septage are we really going to likely collect every day, every week, every month. So to gather this data, we do something called a rapid technical assessment, where we're really looking at what is the average size of the septic tank in the community and how easy or difficult is it going to be to access that tank. So for example, if the road is very narrow and it's very difficult for the truck to get in, maybe we need to have some motorcycle tanker or even a hand cart to access. If we find out that a lot of the septic tanks in the community are buried under the house and might not have any manhole or access port, we need to know this information because that will relate how easy or difficult it's going to be to access the tank with the hose. An example, we did a community of 5,000 homes in Indonesia, and you only really had to sample about 250 homes to get a statistically significant cross-section of that community at a 95% confidence level. And we were able to do that with 15 enumerators in 3 days. So this is very good information that can then inform the design of the facility, how big it needs to be, what the cost is going to be, and how many trucks and staff will be required to collect that waste. The second kind of information we're very interested in is about the people, the social aspects. So we want to know what the attitudes and the knowledge and the practices are in the community about sanitation. What do people really feel? What are their needs, their wants, and their desires? What is going to motivate a person or a family to pay a fee? And a lot of times this is a fee that they've never had to pay before. Most people in the Philippines, for example, have never had their septic tank desludged, and let alone pay a fee every month. So what might be some of the motivators why somebody would want to support this program with a user fee is the next kind of information that we're after. Find out, what are your motivators? What is important to you? Why would you consider septic management for your household, and would you be willing to pay for it? So in Dumaguete, where we are now, one of the important motivators was the environment. In this community, they have a very nice boulevard along the waterfront that in the past people would go up and down and walk on it and promenade and do their exercises. And for a long time, people were not going to the boulevard because it smelled bad, because of all the wastewater was going into the bay, and it was not very appealing. So this was a key motivator for this community. People really wanted to bring back the boulevard. And by the way, they have done that. And now if you go to the waterfront, some nights you can see 10,000 people walking up and down and doing their exercises in the evenings. That was a very successful campaign, because it really tied the people's emotional connection to the boulevard with the sanitation improvement. Another more powerful motivator than the ones that we've talked about so far, and that's the economic motivator. Money is a very powerful motivator. With this regular desludging program, the payments are spread out over years, so they only have to pay a small amount every month, which is the equivalent of less than even $1 per family per month. So here in the Philippines, in Dumaguete, it's 30 to 40 pesos per family per month on average, with the poor people paying even less at about 20 pesos per month. If you ask somebody, is this affordable? Most people will say, well, yeah, that's not even the cost of a half a pack of cigarettes. We can afford that. That's definitely more affordable than, for example, paying the equivalent of $100 to get your tank desludged at one shot, which is a big hardship. But remember, it's really critical, if you're going to do a promotions campaign and you don't use the right motivator, like if you're talking about, maybe the environment, and people are not that focused on the environment, your campaign is going to come up short, and it will not achieve its goal, which is to raise the willingness of people to pay for the service, right? So really what we're trying to do is match very accurately the motivator to the message. And then when we have that message, we want to get that message disseminated through a medium that we know that people will listen to. So it's the motivator, it's the message, and it's the medium. We know what the motivators are from our focus group discussions, right, that we talked about. So now we have to craft that into a message. And one way of doing that is to come up with a problem statement. And you can do this easily with a word association exercise where you have a scribe and a group of people, and we talk about what are all the words that are associated with this problem of septage. And people start coming up with ideas and writing them on the blackboard, and then you can start sort of putting them together into phrases and then come up with an actual statement of what the problem is, and maybe what the solution is, and maybe what the benefits of achieving that solution would be to the people. And now we're starting to come up with a message. And then we have lots of tools that we can use to support that message. So photographs, that's a great way of improving our message. And we come up with a series of pictures that show the good behaviors, people desludging their septic tanks, people paying their user fees, whatever the behavior is we want to encourage. And we check to see if the photos are really good, because the photos should tell the story without any words. And then you know you really have a nice set of photographs. And then you can put some keywords in there, and you can have a very nice output, which in this case might be a poster, or it might be a flyer. And one of the things that they used very successfully here in Dumaguete was they came up with like a flyer that they added to the water bill. Because they're sending out a water bill anyway to all the people. This is really a very easy, cost-effective method of getting the word out about the program. One very powerful way of doing this is by engaging the children at the schools. We've already seen how that's very effective at getting the message out for washing hands, the WASH message. But it can also be very useful for doing plays and community theater and parades. And this is very useful for kickoff events. So you want to invite the community together, and you can have a little play or a song or a parade. And that can sort of be a very nice kickoff event for a campaign on septage management, for example. So engaging the kids through school plays or community theater, that's very powerful. Another powerful method of getting the message across is through interpersonal communications, one-on-one meetings. Now that's time consuming, but here in the Philippines, we have the barangay health workers, the BHWs. And in some communities, like in Dumaguete, there's a couple hundred BHWs that are going out anyway, doing family planning and talking to people about childhood health. They can easily be empowered to do interpersonal communications about the septage management program just by having a flyer with them as they go on their rounds and handing out that information. It's really not just one message, and it's just not one outreach mechanism. It's a multimedia and multi-message approach. And it's not just a one-shot deal. This has got to be an ongoing activity, talking about the program, not just this month or next month, but forever, so that people continue to get a fresh message and continue to understand the benefit of what this program is doing for them in their community.
At that time, of course, they did not know that this is a money-making venture. So the money that they invested into this was close to 24 million initially. But the mayor did not think much of it as an investment that will have a return. It was more of an environmental program for him. So, but then they realized later, after us showing them the projections, that they would make money. As a matter of fact, the numbers are showing now that the payback would have been like 4 years if they did not buy additional infrastructure. Like here, the building that we just, the holding building that we just saw over there, the motor pole, the staff house, and the additional trucks came already from the reserve. So, and that sums up to 10 million additional infrastructure put into the facility. So the 10 million came from the reserve funds that they appropriate every year and every month. They reserve 20% of the net surplus, of the net earnings. They reserve 20% of that and put it back in terms of infrastructure, while the remaining 80% is given back to both the water district and the LGU on a 50-50 distribution. Well, 10 million each, 20 million for both that they got. The 30 million is a lot more than the 24 million that they initially invested. So the payback was actually 4 years, except that they put in the 10 million back, and therefore they just need to recover 4 million more since 2014. So I suspect by this time they would have recovered the whole 24 million.
I think Josie is very well versed in the after the presenting this to the public, etc. So on, so on. When this started, there were so many apprehensions when they started the clearing, etc. So when it started the operations and we had the chance to talk to the mayor, I told the mayor, this type of arrangement you wanted with the city government and the water district, this is good only if you are still the mayor and I am the manager. But after this, it would be different. So why? Because there might some, as administration is changed, lain na po ang mga priorities. So there will be a time nga the septage project that we have now would not be properly managed. It would not be properly, it would be, the services might be lousy. So for us to be collecting, we are actually on in the front line. So what you are paying us is not enough for the humiliation that we get, perhaps for the lousy service in the future. So I said, why won't we go into a joint venture? We put up the same capital, we divide the project cost. Then we will divide the income if there is, or losses if there are losses. So meaning to say, Mayor, is we will divide benefits or miseries if there is. So that's why we come up to that joint venture. We try to draft the memorandum of agreement. Now we see to it that the memorandum of agreement is that even if there is a change in the administration, no one can just change the system. It's actually there in the memorandum of agreement. So meaning to say, no one can change unilaterally the rates. Dili pwede. Okay, I had that fear nga, if, you know, there will be a change in administration, there are new councilors, young, dynamic councilor who wants to, you know, magpagransan because of the election, they might say nga, oh, the 2 pesos is too much. It should be reduced. Now, what will happen to our investment? Yours is different because yours is actually an expense, but ours is an investment. We have to repay for our investment. We have to recover. So that's why all those safeguards included.